Namaste, I'm Nikita, and today I would like to talk to you about procrastination. Now, procrastination might be a topic that might trigger some of you if you consider yourself to be a procrastinator. However, today what I would like to do is unpick what the word means, how we can recognize those patterns within ourselves, and most importantly, how we can overcome it. So you may wish to get your journal or your notebook in order to make notes as we go along, and specifically if any examples come to light for you, then reflecting on those and bringing those to the forefront of your awareness. So what exactly is procrastination and why do we do it? Well, it's not necessarily a bad thing, is the first thing to say. It's there for a reason. In fact, everything in our life is there for a reason. All of our negative, so-called negative and positive personality traits are there to serve each other. They're there for a reason. And so therefore, the first thing is, if you do consider yourself to be a procrastinator, then eliminating any guilt or shame around it. So the purpose of this video is to be able to recognize if we do have any of these traits within us, and to ask ourselves if they're serving us well. And if they are, then it's fine. We keep it as it is. We don't need to change anything. But if it's not serving you well, and if you think that you could do things differently, this will be your opportunity to reflect on that after this session. So procrastination, we've all been there, that looming deadline, a project that we've been working towards. And yet we know that we've got to do something, and sometimes we don't do it. So we perhaps replace it with scrolling on social media or doing something else instead of tackling the task. Now that's procrastination in action. So the definition of procrastination is the act of voluntarily delaying or postponing a task, despite knowing that there could be negative consequences in doing so. So I'll repeat that. So it's voluntarily, that means we're choosing to do it, delaying or postponing a task, even though we know that there may be negative consequences if we don't do it. So it's much more than just laziness. It's a complex behavioral pattern in psychology, and there are a number of underlying causes for it. So we're going to explore a few of those today. So if any jump out at you, you may wish to write them down. Like I said, you might want to write down examples of an area in your life where you are procrastinating. It could be something at work, it could be the kitchen cupboards at home, it could be tidying the garage, whatever it is that you've been putting off. This is your opportunity to really look into, why am I putting it off? What is it that I'm afraid of? Because it's usually some kind of fear that drives procrastination. So a fear of failure, for example. So a fear of failure is being afraid of not doing something well enough. So because we're so afraid that we're not going to be able to do it to the best that we know we are capable of doing it, it kind of puts us into this state of paralysis, and then we end up avoiding the task altogether. So recognizing that, is it that I'm afraid of not doing it right? Is it because I think I'm not going to get it perfect? Now, perfectionists really struggle with this because they have this desire, or almost a pressure that they put on themselves to achieve a high standard. So if they're unable to achieve the standard that they set for themselves, it's quite crippling. And then that ends up leading them to procrastinate, because they have a fear that if they don't complete the task or do it insufficiently, then they have failed. So fear of failure and perfectionism go hand in hand. And you'll often hear the phrase, make progress, not perfection. And so this is something that perfectionists may want to take on as a belief for themselves. So progress over perfection. That's the new belief that they might want to adopt in order to overcome this. Also, task aversion. So it might be that we're not doing that task because we just don't like it. We just find it boring. We find it too hard. It just doesn't appeal to us. You know, scrolling social media or watching TV is way more interesting than tidying the garage, for example. Another thing is you might not know where to start. So something like, let's go with that example of tidying the garage. Perhaps it's in such a mess and there are things everywhere that you don't even know where to begin because there's so many boxes and so many things inside the boxes that you're like, I don't even know what I'm going to be doing with them. You don't have a plan. So that's another reason why you may be putting it off. You might be distracted, so you might be someone that starts a task, but then, you know, in our digital age, there are countless distractions like notifications on our phones or an email, or even somebody might come to the door or your child might ask you a question, and that can divert your attention from doing the task. So that might be another reason why you're putting it off. Another interesting one, which may resonate with you, is low self-esteem. So often people who suffer with low self-esteem, they procrastinate, and that tends to be a pattern. And the reason being because they doubt their ability to do the task. So they hesitate because they're not sure that they're actually even capable of executing it. And that could be something very small or something big. In fact, it might even be something that's seemingly small, but they've created it to be bigger than what it is. Another reason why people procrastinate is poor time management. So not having enough time or believing that they don't have enough time. But it could also be that they haven't broken down the task into smaller, manageable steps. So perhaps they're seeing the task as something very big, like, for example, a project at work or writing an email to their boss. Perhaps seeing it as something that's much bigger than what it is and not actually knowing how much time to allocate towards it. So therefore it ends up feeling overwhelming, and then procrastination ends up being a coping mechanism in that circumstance. Some people who struggle to manage their time effectively, they lead to missed deadlines and delayed tasks. So it's almost like they know that they're going to miss the deadline and they know that they're not going to get their task finished, but they're willing to take that chance because they don't have a clear plan or a structure, and it's easy to lose focus and direction. So this is not to make anyone feel guilty or anything. As we said, this is just to highlight some of the reasons why people procrastinate. And the last one, and I'm sure there are many more, but these are the ones that I've chosen to focus on, this is actually probably my favourite one. Some people are just rebels and they procrastinate on purpose because they don't want to feel like they are doing something externally imposed. So what I mean by that is some people like to do things differently. So in NLP, we call it mismatch. Mismatching means somebody who will deliberately go against the grain, do something different. You know, if they're told to turn left, they'll turn right just to see what's on the other side. So if you have that rebellious nature in you, then you might be a procrastinator because you might think, well, you know, it's I don't want other people to tell me what to do or when to do it or things like that. So that might be a reason why you put things off. Also, some people who are like that, they pretend that they're not capable. That's another interesting trait in psychology. So pretending that the task is too hard for them to do, even though they know it's not. And that's another part of having a rebellious nature. So which of these did you connect with the most? Did you see yourself in any of these? If so, I would love to hear from you. So procrastination, as I said at the start, it's not a negative thing. It can lead to negative consequences, but ultimately it actually is there to protect us. That's why there's something within us that's stopping us from taking action. And so it's there to almost keep us small, keep us safe. So it's that logical mind, it's that prefrontal cortex that's trying to keep you safe, not just in survival mode, but able to cope with your day-to-day. And so looking at procrastination, it can lead to stress, it can lead to anxiety. The biggest thing is it leads to decreased productivity because we don't end up getting as much done as we want to. And the saddest one out of all is it leads to missed opportunities. So often I'll hear people saying to me that I'm so disappointed that I didn't apply for that job, or I didn't go for the interview, or I didn't finish my CV on time. And they feel that there's a missed opportunity there because of procrastination. And then that leads to feelings of guilt and shame. And then that obviously fuels the cycle all over again. So what we want to try to do is break that cycle if we can. So the good news is that procrastination is a learned behavior. So remember we said it's a behavioral trait. So therefore it can be unlearned, just like anything that we do. A negative self-talk, for example, can be turned into positive self-talk. So there is an opposite of everything. So the opposite of procrastination is productivity. So how do we make that jump from one side to the other? And how do we become a master of task completion? Well, addressing procrastination is the first thing. So that's why we went through that list. Recognizing where you are on that scale. Are you somebody who procrastinates sometimes or all the time? What's interesting is some people procrastinate in some areas of their life and not in others. So I'll give you my example. When it comes to my career, anything related to my career, I'm a go-getter. I am someone who executes my ideas straight away. I will come up with an idea in the morning for a workshop or a retreat or something I'd like to run. And by the evening, I've got a Facebook page, I've got a LinkedIn account, event. I've got, it's on my website. I've got a new flyer. I will put everything out there. However, when it comes to the housework and the domestic chores, for example, I'll know the house needs hoovering, but I won't do it. Or I'll know that we need to cook a meal from scratch, and I won't do it. So that's me. So I procrastinate in some areas of my life and not in others. So that's also an interesting behavioral trait. So the first thing really, if you would like to overcome it, is to address the underlying reasons why you procrastinate. So I'll go back to my example with the housework. So my underlying reason for not hoovering the house or for making a meal from scratch when I know that I need to is because I know that I don't really need to, because I don't have children, for example. It's only me and my husband. He's very easygoing. He doesn't really mind if we get anything out of the freezer, put it in the air fryer. It doesn't really matter. So cooking a meal from scratch, for example, it's a nice thing to do, but it's not a high level priority for me. So because I know that's my underlying reason, that's why I can afford to procrastinate. If, for example, we had allergies or we had dietary requirements or somebody was coming over, that would then suddenly change and it would become a priority for me. So looking into your underlying reasons, what's the reason that you haven't tidied, that bedroom, or you haven't unpacked that suitcase, or whatever it is that you're procrastinating on. And then think about how to implement strategies to overcome them. For example, you may wish to set clear goals for yourself. And again, like we said, break them down into small chunks so that they're manageable and they're less overwhelming for you. You might want to create a structured plan. So big projects, for example, anything related to your work, or even a home renovation will require a bigger plan. So having timelines and deadlines, and then making sure that everybody involved in that is on the same page. So for example, my husband and I, we have a shared OneNote. So for those who don't know, Microsoft have OneNote. So I'm not here to promote Microsoft, don't get me wrong, but it's a very good tool to use because we're both able to see each other's notes. So we can update the shopping lists, or we can write things that we need to buy for the house or whatever. And we're both able to see it at all times. Similarly, if I find a holiday, I can just put the link on OneNote, and when he's got time, he can have a look, and then we're able to discuss it, rather than me just messaging him in the middle of a day when he's not likely to be able to look into it, and it's just going to distract his flow. So we use a tool to help us with that, and that's almost us sharing projects or plans. So that's another way that you could do it. If you live with somebody and if you need to work with someone, and if you feel like it's a bit frustrating doing things on your own and not having the other person's input, then you may wish to have a shared tool like that. Also, minimizing distractions. Like we've all heard people say, put your phone on silent, put it away, don't look at it unless it's an emergency. And it's about doing that. It's about really being able to get into a state of flow so that you are able to do your task without getting distracted. Another one is to practice self-compassion. So remember I said earlier, don't feel guilty. If this is you, we all have it. I gave my own example. We've all got this trait within us, some more so than others. That's why I say it's like a scale, recognizing where you are on that scale. Challenging core beliefs is another very valuable tool to do. So we do this a lot in NLP, and a lot of my coaching when I'm working one-to-one with clients, and even in group sessions, actually identifying your limiting beliefs. So overachievers, especially people like myself who are entrepreneurs, who are self-employed, we tend to have core beliefs that are fueling our relentless pursuit towards achievement. But some of these beliefs might not be serving us well. For example, I remember that I had a belief. I don't have it anymore because I've had to work on it. But one of my beliefs was my self-worth is linked to my accomplishments. So that was something that I thought for many, many years, up until recently actually. So I would work really hard to achieve lots of things. I'd tick off all my goals on my to-do list. I would try and work towards my bucket list. I would try to get awards. I would try to get a lot of validation, reviews, testimonials, because it was more than just building up my business. It was my self-worth was linked to my accomplishments. And another belief that I held was failure is unacceptable. So whether that was told to me when I was a child, or whether that's something I picked up by myself, I don't know. And it almost doesn't matter where it came from. What matters is how can we challenge that belief and how can we change it. So to change it, we call that reframing. So to reframe your limiting beliefs, what we do is replace them with empowering ones. So for example, the belief that I held was my worth is tied to my accomplishments. So to turn that around, I changed it to my worth is inherent regardless of my achievements. Now, this is something that didn't sound natural in the beginning. I was like, that sentence does not sound like me. But the more and more you say it, the more it becomes natural, the more it becomes you. And then another belief I took on was mistakes are opportunities to learn and grow. So I replaced failure is unacceptable for mistakes are opportunities to learn and grow. So these are things that we can tell ourselves, like affirmations, in order to develop a growth mindset. So focusing on learning and shifting our focus from proving ourselves to other people to actually developing ourselves and enjoying the process, not just the outcome. I think that's been a real big learning curve for me, because I think I was someone who was very I had like tunnel vision. I think since a young age, I set up my dance company when I was only 20. So I was very focused, very ambitious. And so one thing that I've learned along the way is to enjoy the process, not just the destination. Also, celebrate effort. How many of us celebrate effort? And I don't just mean celebrate outcome. I'm not saying when you tidy the garage, you should open a bottle of champagne. That's what you can do that. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying celebrate effort. What that means is even if you tidy half of the garage, open a bottle of champagne. Like, it doesn't have to be champagne. It can be flowers. It can be, painting your nails. It can be anything that you want to do to reward yourself. And if you think about children, when a child comes home and they bring like a picture that they've drawn at school or something they've coloured in, what's the first thing we say? Oh, well done. That's beautiful. That's so good. What a lovely effort. So we always commend their effort, even if the picture's not a perfect picture. It's the effort. And so going back to basics and doing that for ourselves, to celebrate your effort as well as your progress. And of course the outcome, I mean, that goes without saying. I'm sure that you're already celebrating your outcomes, but celebrating the effort is really a big one that I'd like you to take away from this session today. So recognize your progress, even if your goal hasn't been fully achieved. Recognize the intention. So I keep on talking about tidying, so you can tell that that's one of the things that I need to be doing. Let me try and think of some more examples outside of tidying. So say for example, I've wanted to learn baking for a long time. It's been on my to-do list. It's on my bucket list. I want to learn baking. And, making the effort. So buying a baking book, buying, a cake maker, buying the equipment. So that could be a first step. And then celebrating the fact that you've done that. So it's not just thinking, okay, when I bake my cookies or my cake, that's when I'm going to be happy. It's like every step of the journey, because each time you're doing something, it's out of your comfort zone. And so recognizing that and praising yourself, just like we praise children. And then starting to wrap up, finding purpose beyond your achievements. So this is something that I really talk about a lot when I do my dharma workshops. So purpose is probably my favorite word, and you'll notice that I'm lighting up just by talking about it, because I love the concept of dharma, and in Japanese it's known as 𝐂𝐎𝐍𝐍𝐄𝐂𝐓. So this is the idea of connecting to something bigger than us. So overachievers especially, they tend to connect their goals and their ambitions to a bigger purpose. So there's something larger that they believe in at their core. And this adds a lot of meaning and also intrinsic motivation, which goes beyond external validation. So I think the biggest difference between someone who is connected to a bigger purpose is they're doing it for a cause, not just for themselves. So, for example, I said earlier on that whenever I get an idea about a workshop or a retreat that I'm going to run, I straight away execute it. Like, I don't even hesitate. I get it online, I put it on my website. I'm like, within 2 days or 3 days, it's like, already starting to get booked up. So I do that because it's not about me. It's about the people that I'm going to serve. And I know that if I've had an idea, it's because that idea came to me as a medium through which I'm supposed to support people. So my belief behind that is every idea is given to you for a reason. That's my belief. So if I ignore my idea and I don't do it, it's a bit of an insult to the idea, but it's also a bit of an insult to the people that I wish to serve. and I have a strong sense of purpose. So for example, I had an idea to run a forest bathing retreat. Now, I've never run a forest bathing retreat before. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm not even much of an outdoors person. But I had this idea, and I lived near a forest, so it made sense. It ticked the boxes. It was something that I thought would be a nice day. So I put it together and then let go of the outcome. I made a flyer, I put it on my website, I set up a Facebook group. Within 3 days, honestly, hand on my heart, within 3 days, 5 people booked on. And that was my maximum capacity. So I knew, based on my belief that every idea comes to us for a reason, I knew that had happened for a reason, and that there was something that I was supposed to learn in this process, and that these 5 people were also supposed to join and to learn from me. Out of all of the cold and wet and rainy days that there could have been in the month of July, which is supposed to be the summer month in England, the one hottest day was the day that I did that forest retreat, and it was beautiful weather. And up until the day before, I was so worried that it was going to rain. As I said, I'm not an outdoorsy person. And so I was thinking, how am I going to adapt forest bathing? How am I going to do it if everybody's wet? And yet I didn't need to worry about any of that, because it just fell into place. The group got along. It was amazing dynamics. Everybody just gelled, and it was a perfect day. And ever since then, I've now been promoting more and more, and I've got the next 3 are already booked up. So where did that come from? Had I procrastinated, which is what this whole webinar is about, that wouldn't have happened. And those 5 people wouldn't have had the most beautiful experience and what they described as the best day of their year. That's what they wrote in their testimonial. So it wasn't about me, it was about them. I could have made it about me. I could have said, well, actually, I don't know how to do this. I'm not sure of the weather. I think I'll leave it until next summer. I'll go on some training. I'll get better and then I'll do it. Like, there's so many things I could have said to myself to talk myself out of it. And I'm laughing because, you know, it was so easy for me to do that. And you're probably even laughing to yourself right now, because it could be something that you do as well. So like I say, it's not about feeling guilty, it's about recognizing. Awareness is the first step. So to wrap this up, I hope that you've been making notes as we've gone along. If not, then you can perhaps watch this back, or you can reflect and journal afterwards. So some final thoughts that I'd like to leave you with to bring procrastination into productivity. So practicing gratitude is my favorite tip of everything that I teach, and I teach a lot. I teach mindfulness, meditation, chakra balancing, NLP. I would honestly say gratitude is the most important of them all. Even if you don't meditate, which I strongly urge people to meditate every day, but even if you don't do that, practicing gratitude is so important. Because when you practice gratitude, what you're doing is you're bringing awareness to all the good things, big and small, and that helps shift your focus from where you lack to what you have. And we all have so much to be grateful for, even people that are going through difficult circumstances. So really honing in on that. So you may wish to start a gratitude journal, so whereby you write down every day 3 things that you're grateful for. And what this does is it cultivates a positive mindset, and then it reduces feelings of emptiness from, externally wanting to strive towards something. Another thing you may want to do to help you manage your stress and anxiety, or even perfectionism, is to use therapy. Now, therapy can be with a therapist, obviously, but it doesn't have to be psychological counselling or life coaching. It can be, but it can also be through holistic therapy, which is what, I really advocate being a Reiki therapist myself. So holistic therapies are now gaining a lot more recognition than ever before. So there's a lot more research about how they can really help with underlying feelings of being inadequate or having stress or anxiety or being a perfectionist, which can be a negative personality trait. So if you would like to work with a therapist, that might help you to process your thoughts and feelings, and then you might find that you really bring yourself into a state of harmony, and that procrastination just naturally slips away, and you want to step into productivity because you have a stronger sense of purpose. I really hope that you've enjoyed today's session as much as I have. I mean, I love talking, so I could go on, but I'm very respectful of your time, and so I don't want to go on more than I need to. I hope you've got enough food for thought, enough nuggets of wisdom to take away with you today. Please do comment. Let me know what your biggest takeaways are, and let me know if you would like to hear of other themes. There's so much more I can talk about. I could do a whole session just on gratitude, just on mindfulness, meditation, chakra balancing, energy healing, self-talk, positive attitude and mindset. There's so much that I'm interested in and intrigued by, and so much we can learn from each other. So I look forward to supporting you on your journey. Namaste.